Y'all see the description. R.I.P. to the legend, Jesse Jackson. Any man that been around as long as he been around, even if you don't agree with their ways or beliefs or whatever, you know what I mean? You still pay homage to him or whatever. I'm not saying me, I'm just hypothetically saying, but any nigga that lived and you was around Martin Luther King in the 60s and then the 70s and all of that and 90s and 2000s, you're a legend. You know what I mean? Like, the man tried to run for president twice, I think they said, in 84 and 88. That didn't turn out too well for him, but he tried. You know what I mean? Man who overcame many obstacles. Ain't nobody perfect, you know. We had another legend that died too. That passed away too. Rest in peace, Robert Duvall. Y'all might know you've seen him in some movies. OG played in 60 Seconds and a lot of other classic movies. Colors, you know what I mean? So rest in peace to him too. But Jesse Jackson, man, you know, he lived and seen a lot, man. You know what I mean? Like to make it all them years through all types of life shit is amazing along yourself. You know what I mean? And like I said, you ain't really got to go too deep and much into him because, like I say, if you ran with Martin Luther King and it's 2026, shit, you a legend. You know what I mean? At the time he tried to run for president, it just wasn't no good time. You know what I mean? At 84, like it just wasn't no good time. You know what I mean? You got to have more than the black community behind you. You know what I mean? So, and then especially when you got people like what's the other dude, Reverend L. Sharpton. He admitted that he was an LBI informant trying to help divide people. You know what I mean? So, you know, he tried. You know what I mean? And you know what I mean? The votes and all that, it didn't work out in his favor. Then he tried again in '88, which is I think that might have been when the first Bush tried, and you know what I mean? You ain't got enough to power to even go against around that time, the first Bush, because in '88 his whole campaign was that Edward Barnes situation that people don't really realize, but like in Queens, with them killing this cop named Edward Barnes, a rookie cop, in '88, it really messed up the laws as far as for everybody when they came with the 650 law right after that. You know what I mean? So a lot of people not really aware that Queens is really the reason why the drug law, when they used to have the 650 law, when they was booking motherfuckers left and right, was because of when Queens and them killed that cop, Edward Barnes or something like that, a rookie cop. And after that, they came with a 650 law for drugs and shit like that. You get caught with 650 grams, they booking your ass. So, but yeah, when I saw that, you know, we have a lot of legends, man. That you know what I mean. That's how you know life be life for real because you know what I mean. Like I don't know much about him, but I remember you know seeing him on podiums and talking and shit like that. Like I never seen him in person, but you know what I mean. That he kind of laid low. Like you, you really haven't been seeing him. You know what I mean? Like you would probably see him more. It seemed like maybe like the early 2000s, some shit like that or whatever. You know, he may probably pop out. I don't see, but you know what I mean. But um, yeah, man, the man, you know, he had a hell of a life, man. You know what I mean? To live through generation after generation after generation like that, man. You know what I mean? And it'll take goddamn 40,000 books just to you could rewrite his shit so many different ways. You know what I mean? You know, so I thought it was very important to say, man, R.I.P. to Jesse Jackson, man. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't say. Some people say, well, would you qualify him as a black leader? I would just qualify him as a spokesperson, and maybe he had leader qualities. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't really know much about him all like that. You know what I mean? I studied more of a Malcolm X type vibe. You know what I mean? Not the Elijah Muhammad version Malcolm, the one who, you know what I mean, start campaigning his own campaign, you know what I mean, and realizing things and shit like that or whatever, you know. But a lot of them dudes, man, who was legends, you know what I mean, through the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s and shit like that. You know what I mean? When you hear they pass away, you do be like, damn, because life goes so fast, man. You know, when you meet, I'm 42, so his name, you know what I mean? I remember hearing his name, you know what I mean? Plus, he from the rack, he from Chicago. And then a lot of people might not know that he had a brother. I think his brother got locked up on some crazy shit or whatever. But they tried to destroy him because his brother had a reputation, and you know he stayed away from that shit and tried politics. You know what I mean? But politics is a dirty game. It's worse than football. You know what I mean? So if you ain't got the right finances and connections, you know what I mean? Shit, you just gonna get ran over. Practically gonna push you up out of there. You know. But at least he got to see a lot of things. You know, somewhat change. You know what I mean? Because if you was around in the '60s and all of that, and then you made it all the way to 2026, at least you was able to, you know, see that a black president got in. You know what I mean? A lot of important shit happened. You know what I mean? That you witnessed. You know what I mean? And stuff still going on. You know what I mean? But you was able to see things that Martin Luther King didn't see. You know what I mean? And people around you. You know what I mean? Could you imagine if you was him and you was around Martin Luther King and it's 2026, you just passed. You've seen more than more than enough. Like you've really lived life, you know what I mean, to the fullest as far as, you know what I mean, like aging and all of that. You know what I mean? So I don't want to say some people be, you know, you have some people who really sick or they tired of fight. They'll say, you know, I'm ready to go, but deep in reality, you know what I mean? They don't be ready to go, like, because it's like people understand what life is. You know what I mean? Being alive means something. You know what I mean? Even when you pass away, it ain't that you don't mean nothing, but who wouldn't want to be alive? You know what I mean? Who wouldn't want to be alive? You know what I mean? Be around their loved ones and people who truly care for them. You know what I mean? So Jesse Jackson, dog. You know what I mean? Stood the test of time. You know what I mean? I ain't want to throw no old pickup of him, the young one. You know what I mean? But yeah, man, if you ain't familiar with Jesse Jackson, man, go tap in with him. You know what I mean? Go to YouTube, put his name in. You know what I mean? Do a little history on him and shit like that. And sometimes it don't take an hour long. You know what I mean? They be having little 9 minute clips, all type of different clips. You know what I mean? Tap in. You know what I mean? And if you fuck with them, you do. You don't. You know what I mean? But hey, it's just good to know your history. You know what I mean? You want to know. It's different conversation levels for different people, and you always want to be able to be a part of these conversations and know what's going on. You know what I mean? So, like I say, man, RP to the legend Jesse Jackson, Tribe TV. You know what I mean? Y'all hold it down. Go to my YouTube. You know what I mean? Check my posts. Like, share, comment this video. You know what I mean? Y'all hold it down. Stay blessed. Salute, Tri Gang. We out.